Hey guys, welcome to this session on how to become a front-end developer by Intellipaat. Front-end development is one of the hottest technologies right now, and there's a lot to cover in front-end development. Front-end development encompasses a lot of technologies, and it could be a bit daunting to get started with all these technologies. So keeping that in mind, we'll come up with this session in which we will demystify some of the concepts and help you get started with the front-end development. So let's get started. Before we begin, do subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss another update. So let's take a look at the agenda for this session. So we'll take a look at the introduction to becoming a front-end developer. We'll understand what a front-end developer does, what's the roles and responsibilities of a front-end developer, what are they expected to know, and then we'll move on to take a look at the salaries of a front-end developer. Then we'll learn about the basic technologies that every front-end developer must know. And then we'll take a look at some of the advanced technologies. These are technologies that you may need to know some of these technologies, or you may need to know all of them depending on the job role that you're applying for. Then we'll take a look at the companies that hire front-end developers. And finally, you'll be given a learning path that will help you demystify these things and learn these technologies quite easily. So let's have an introduction to front-end development. So the first question that comes into your mind is, what is front-end development? Front-end development is the process of writing code and building components that are rendered by the browser on the user screen, and they can interact with your product using those components. So if ever you landed on a website and you've seen some buttons, some text, some date picker UI, some gadget, some widget, anything that you can interact with on a website has been created by a front-end developer. So the front-end developer's job is to create the UI and manage the interaction of the user with the user interface and keep the website running smoothly. Front-end developers need to take care of three components of a website. The structure. So the structure of a website is basically how the content is structured. Where does the form appear in the web page? Where does the heading appear? Is the heading above the paragraph or not? All of these things are taken care of by the front-end developer. They also take care of the styles. So a designer might give them a Photoshop or any other design tooled document in which they can take a look at the document and then replicate that document to be covered and displayed in a web browser. So they use technologies which we'll discuss in this video, and we'll understand how to use those technologies to replicate the documented design on the website. And then there's behavior. So the behavior basically means the interactivity. So when you touch a button, does a model appear? Does the form get submitted? And what happens? All of this is taken care by the front-end developer as well. Now let's take a look at the salaries of a front-end developer. So the junior front-end developer in America earns around $65,000, and in India they earn around 5.5 lakhs per annum. And a senior front-end developer earns around $108,000 and 10.5 lakhs per annum in Indian rupees. Now let's take a look at some of the basic technologies that you are expected to know as a front-end developer. So these are the technologies that any front-end developer is expected to know. If you wish to call yourself a front-end developer, then you must know these three technologies quite well. First is HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the language that is understood by the browsers, and this is what allows the browser to understand the structure of your web page. Whatever tool you are using, whatever technologies you are using, whether it's front end, back end, all of that is combined to generate HTML so that the browser can render that HTML. Then there's CSS. CSS takes care of the styling of your web page. So it takes care of layout, positioning, styles, outlines, colors, everything that is visually appealing about your website has been taken care by CSS. And then there's JavaScript. JavaScript takes care of the behavior of your website. How does the form get submitted? How does a notification gets displayed? And how does a website appears a slider or any other widget that you see on a website, such as date pickers, image sliders, carousel. They have JavaScript working in the background. So let's take a look at these technologies one by one. Firstly, we'll take a look at HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So it's a markup language. It's not a programming language, but a markup language. It allows you to define the structure and the elements of your web page. So how does the form appear? What are the elements that are inside the form? Is there a paragraph? Is the heading the first level heading, the second level heading? All of these things are then taken a look at by users, and also the web browsers and search crawlers take a look at the structure and understand how important some content in your website is. So when you're learning HTML, you should learn the tags in HTML. These tags allow us to communicate to the browser to show them what the text wrapped inside these tags represent. Is it a heading? Is it a paragraph? Or is it a label for some form or something else? Then come attributes. So attributes are extensions to tags. They allow us to define additional properties on a tag. They allow us to change the size of an image, change the alternative text, so on and so forth. And then there's selectors. Selectors are quite important. They allow us to pinpoint to a specific element on a web page. These selectors are also used in CSS and JavaScript. So if you understand selectors in HTML, you can work with CSS and JavaScript quite easily. And next is CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it is used to define styles and layouts for the elements of a web page. So if you see a web page that has a blue rounded button, all of that has been done by CSS. CSS takes care of the styling of the web page, so you define the majority of the styles that you want to be displayed on your web page using CSS. So when you're learning CSS, learn the basics. The basics are quite easy to pick up. CSS is not that difficult to learn, but firstly make sure that you've got the basics under your belt. Then you need to learn responsive design. So responsive design basically means that whenever you look at a web page and when you shrink the web page's window down, and it automatically adapts to a mobile UI. That means when you shrink it down and it automatically shrinks the text down to fit it nicely on the screen, that's responsive design. Responsive design takes care of the screen size, different screen sizes that your web page might be viewed at. Instead of creating different pages for different screen sizes, your content will automatically adapt to the available space. Then there's CSS animations and transitions. These are fairly new things. They were added in the latest version of CSS, CSS3. But these are quite important because they use your native devices, graphic cards and all of that to take care of the animations. So they run really smoothly. So earlier they used to do it with JavaScript, but since animations and transitions are now natively available in CSS and they perform really well, these are some of the things that you might need to know if you wish to learn CSS. And then there's flexbox and grid. They allow us to define the layout of our website. So if you want to display something at the center of your screen, both horizontally and vertically, to do that you need to understand how the layout of a web page works. And flexbox and grids are two new technologies. Flexbox came in earlier and then came grids. So you can take a look at both of them. Flexbox has a good support. So most of the major browsers support Flexbox, and grid is also being widely adopted. So learn Flexbox and then you can learn grids so that you can better lay out your website. Now let's take a look at JavaScript. So JavaScript is a scripting language and it is used to add interactivity to your website. So when you click on an image carousel and the image gets changed to some other image, that is used by JavaScript. So JavaScript is running in the background and taking care of users' click events and then changing the image from one image to other in the carousel. So when you're learning JavaScript, learn the basics. Now the basics are quite easy to pick up. Even if you don't know a programming language, JavaScript is quite easy to understand. The basics basically cover the if statements, loops, for loops, while loops, do while loops. If you know a language already, and if it's a C style language like C, Java, .NET, then picking up JavaScript is going to be really easy. At least the basics are going to be really easy. After you're done with the basics, you should learn the DOM manipulation and querying. So this basically means using JavaScript, you create HTML nodes and HTML tags dynamically and then add them to your screen. So if you're taking a look at a to-do list in a web page, you add some content in an input box, you click on the add button and it automatically adds that item to your web browser's screen. So that happens through DOM manipulation and DOM querying. DOM querying also allows you to point at a specific element and perform some operations dynamically, like removing the element, changing the CSS style, so on and so forth. So this is one of the most important topics that you need to learn if you are willing to learn JavaScript. And then comes async programming. These include XHR, which stands for XML and HTTP requests, promises, and async await. Async await are quite recent, so in the ES7 spec. Promises are also widely used, and XHR are quite old, so most people don't use XHRs. Now, async programming basically works by sending requests in the background. So to give you an example, if you've ever tried to fill up a form and you fill in a username that you wish to use, and as soon as you move on to filling some other field, and you get a notification back that that username has already been taken without you even submitting the form, that is Ajax at work. So asynchronous programming basically means coding your website in such a way that a request gets sent to another server and the response is received and then displayed on the screen without you having to submit a form or any of the user events. So now let's take a look at the advanced technologies. These technologies build on top of the basic technologies that we have learned so far. So let's take a look at them. So there's build tools. So build tools allow you to basically do some of the tedious tasks and automate them. There's JavaScript frameworks, there's CSS preprocessors, there's CSS frameworks, there's state management tools, and then there's testing. So in case you don't know any of these, it's okay, it's fine. At the end of the session, I'll guide you through some resources that will help you understand all of these technologies. And you don't need to learn all of the technologies in all of these categories. You just need to learn one of them. And most of these technologies are quite easy to pick up once you have picked up the basics. So let's first take a look at build tools. So as I've already said, build tools are used to automate the repetitive tasks that you need to do as a developer. So things like minifying your JavaScript and CSS files, the CSS preprocessing, deploying, compilation, and unit testing, linting your JavaScript, so on and so forth. All of these things you need to do again and again and again. And instead of you having to push a button for all of these tasks, all you can do is just write some scripts that will build these things automatically, so you don't have to then do it again and again. And there are several build tools available. Gulp is one of the most famous ones and it's most widely used right now. Gulp is the successor to Grunt. Now Grunt was used earlier and it allows you to write code in JSON format, and then Gulp will parse it and perform the tasks that you specified. Gulp on the other hand uses JavaScript syntax. There's also Brunch. Brunch is not that popular, but still some companies use it because it's very easy to use. It has limited set of functionalities, but still if your use case is quite small, Brunch is a good option. And then there's Webpack. Webpack is developed by Facebook and it's gaining adoption quite rapidly. So if you are interested in learning new technologies, maybe take a look at Webpack and Gulp. These are two of the latest technologies. And if you are going to work with the legacy system, then Grunt and Brunch might be a better option. So now let's take a look at JavaScript frameworks. So these are the three most popular JavaScript frameworks out there. So a framework basically takes care of some of the most repetitive tasks and allows you to focus on the problem at hand. So when you're building a JavaScript based application, you need to take care of a lot of things like user navigation, button clicks, state management, all of that. And these frameworks to some extent take care of that, so that you can take care of solving a business problem and building a business application for your companies and so on. So as you can see, React is developed by Facebook and is being maintained by Facebook as well. React takes a unique approach in that it does not try to do everything, but it allows you with a code base that takes care of rendering and showing things on a web page. So you can take a look at React if all you wish to do is render some things on a web page and render it as effectively and as efficiently as possible. Angular on the other hand is a full-fledged framework. It's created by Google and it takes care of a lot of things, including template inheritance and showing dynamic content on the web page, taking care of XML and HTTP requests, so on and so forth. Now Angular is the newer version. The older version is called AngularJS. AngularJS is still supported, but it's a legacy version, so you are most likely to encounter learning Angular. Then there's Vue. Vue is being maintained by Ivan Yu, And fun fact, Ivan Yu was a Google employee. He built this framework because he found Angular to be a bit more difficult to adopt. So if you are looking to if you're trying to learn a new framework, I would recommend that you learn React because it's the most popular and it's quite easy to pick up as well. If you find React to be a bit tedious to understand, you can take a look at Vue, and you can also take a look at Angular if you like the syntax, if you like the methodologies, then you can adopt Angular as well. Then comes CSS preprocessors. So CSS by itself is quite good, but it lacks some functionalities that make it a bit restricted. So to overcome those restrictions, we use CSS preprocessors. These are basically tools that allow you to write code which will be then compiled into CSS, and in the code that you write, you can use additional features like variables, inheritance, nesting, so on and so forth. This allows you to create CSS style sheets quite rapidly and enhances your workflow speed. So a few CSS preprocessors are Sass, Less, and Stylus. There's not much difference in all three of them. All three of those have almost the same syntax and they have almost the same feature set, and you're only going to be using about 10 to 20% of those feature sets. So take a look at all of them and figure out which one suits your needs the best or which one's syntax you prefer the most, and then use one of them. You don't need to know all of them. Learning one of them is going to be quite enough. Then there's CSS frameworks. So again, a framework basically takes care of some of the tedious tasks, and here there's a lot of pre-written code for you to make it easy for you to perform common tasks such as laying out stuff and theming your website, so on and so forth. So there's Bootstrap. It's developed by Twitter. So if you like Twitter's UI design and you want to replicate that, instead of doing it on your own, you can use Bootstrap as well. The default Bootstrap styles mimic the Twitter styles, and you can change them as per your convenience as well. Then there's Tailwind. Tailwind is a little advanced than Bootstrap, but it's quite customizable and it has a lot of components that you can reuse. Then there's Bulma CSS. So Bulma is quite nice in that it uses quite striking typography and quite dark and deep colors. So if you like that kind of theming system, then you can use Bulma as well. And if you're a fan of Google's material design, then Materialize is a CSS framework that allows you to create a material designed website quite easily, and it has a lot of components that follow the same material design principles that Google uses. Then comes state management. So state management is considered one of the hardest things to do in a front-end application. State management basically means that refers to the task of managing the internal data of an application, and as it changes, keeping those changes in sync with the user interface in the most efficient way possible. So suppose your application is connected to a backend server and it is continuously receiving new data. Now how do you make sure that that data is being updated on the screen as effectively as possible? Right, trying to write code in such a way could be a bit difficult, so there are a few tools that could help you with that. So the most popular, at least in the React community, is Redux. Redux is quite powerful. So if you're trying to learn state management and you're using a React application, then Redux is probably a good choice. There's also MobX, and you can use it with React as well. It's not as feature rich as Redux, but MobX is quite easier to pick up than Redux. So if you don't have a giant use case, then maybe MobX is better for you. Then there's Vuex. As the name suggests, it's used in conjunction with the Vue framework, which is created by Ivan Yu. So Vuex also takes similar methodologies as Redux and MobX. So most of the concepts carry over. It's just the syntax that's a bit different. And then NGRX is working with Angular. So NGRX uses RxJS, which is an extension for reactive programming for JavaScript. It's quite easy to pick up. Once you know Angular and you are in search for a state management framework, then NGRX is probably the best choice for you. Then comes testing. So testing is one of the most important parts of an application. So testing is basically the process of writing code which will verify whether your application is performing all the tasks that you set out to do. So suppose you are building a task management application and you have created some parts of it. Now you wish to add some more code, but how do you make sure that the code you just added didn't break anything else? One way to do it would be to check everything by putting a lot of console.write lines, or maybe using or interacting with the half-built application to take a look at whether or not it throws some error. Now for a small application that's fine, but for a larger application that would be quite a pain. What you can do is you can write some automated tests that will run everything that you wish to check, and it will check everything that your application needs to do as of now, and if it does it correctly, then it will return you a message of success. If it doesn't work, then you can take a look at the failed tasks, and you can understand where your application has failed, and you can correct those errors. So there are many JavaScript testing frameworks. One of them is Jest. Jest is also created by Facebook, and it's very easy and very lightweight, so you can use Jest if you wish to. There's also Mocha. Mocha is also quite good. It's not as feature rich as Jest, but you can use Mocha if you wish to build a small application. There's Jasmine. Jasmine is quite an old framework, so it's not being used in that much popularity, but you can still use Jasmine. And then there's Protractor. Protractor is an end-to-end testing system. So basically you just define the entire flow that the user will take through your application, and Protractor will try to do it. So you can write some code that opens a website, then clicks on a button, then expects some text to be shown, and if that happens in your website, then your tests will pass. So take a look at these frameworks. Jest is probably your best option, and you can also use Mocha. Jasmine is quite old, so you might need to check the documentation to see if it's up to date or not, and Protractor is good for end-to-end testing. Now let's take a look at companies that are hiring front-end developers. So as you can see, there are a lot of multinational companies that are looking for front-end developers. Spotify uses React, so if you know React, then Spotify is a good choice. LinkedIn uses some other frameworks like Ember.js, but the basics are also required. So if you know the basics of any language, in this case JavaScript, then you can pick up these frameworks and use them. Google uses Angular, and Google is quite fond of Angular since they have created it, and they built lots of their websites using Angular.js. Instagram is using React.js. They are also using React Native, which is a React extension that allows you to write React code and build native mobile applications such as Android and JavaScript applications. Then there's Netflix. Netflix is also has got a quite big team of front-end developers that take care of their entire front end of the Netflix UI. Snapchat also uses a lot of front-end JavaScript code, and they need a lot of developers to maintain it. Then there's Alibaba, eBay, and Myntra, and all of them have a public-facing website that needs to be attended to by front-end developers. And there are many more companies that are looking for front-end developers. This is just a small subset of the entire list. So now let's take a look at the learning path. So the first thing is you need to learn the basic technologies. If you wish to become a front-end developer, learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's no getting around that. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is a must. You need to know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in order to build on top of those topics. Then there's advanced technologies. Now there's a lot of breathing room here. You can learn these technologies and pick and choose some of the technologies that you want to learn. You can learn a CSS framework. Instead of learning all of those, just try out a few of them and then learn one of those, and that way you can proceed in learning all of these technologies. Also, you don't need to learn all of the advanced technologies that I've mentioned just now. Use them, learn them as you need to know them. Build a portfolio. So basically build a lot of small scale applications like a to-do list, a chat application. They are really easy to build, especially with the tools that I've mentioned. Once you've learned the tools, then it's very easy for you to understand how to use them. Attend online trainings. So you could gain a lot of additional knowledge from online training because these are being taught by experts, and you can clarify your doubts. You can accelerate your learning curve and learn a lot of things in a lot of short time. And finally, get certified. Certification is one of the most important concepts as of now. If you get certified, then you can stand out of the crowd. Many recruiters take a look at the resumes and are looking for people who are certified. So if you're certified, that definitely gives you a competitive edge. And as you can see, it's one of my favorite quotes, as it says, an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. So if you invest in enhancing your knowledge, then it's not a waste of money. So with that in mind, if you wish to learn anything, if you have any questions, we have a community site on our website, intellipaat.com/community, where people that use different technologies come and ask questions, and they get their questions answered by their peers, or sometimes by technology experts as well. So do check out the community. We also have a blog which teaches you a lot of technologies, not just front end but back end, and there are a lot of technologies that are being covered on our website. We also have a YouTube channel in which we provide a lot of free content so that you can learn a lot from it. You can take a look at a lot of videos. We provide free courses online as well, so you can take a look at them and expand your knowledge and understand what it is that you need to do. Now, all of that said and done, let me show you some of the courses that we offer on web development. So we offer PHP, MySQL, and HTML and jQuery. So if you want to learn the basics of front end and the basics of back end, this course is quite good. If you're into blogging and you wish to learn how to create blogs and how to modify the blogs that you publish, then you can take a look at WordPress. It's quite interesting to learn these technologies. If you are purely certain that you wish to learn Angular, then Angular training is for you. We also provide full front-end technology backend, full backend technology training with PHP and MySQL training. We also have HTML and jQuery training, so you can learn the basics of HTML and JavaScript and jQuery, and you can get a really good in-depth knowledge. So you can also learn Node.js, which is basically JavaScript on the backend. So if you want to build backend applications using JavaScript as well, then you can learn Node.js. And finally, you can also learn both front-end and backend in a single course. So that is the full stack web developer course, and that'll be teaching you the mean stack. So the mean stack is basically a software development stack that contains technology that are all based on JavaScript. So as you can see, it's one of our highest rated courses, and it's really popular and it's really good. We give you a lot of content to go through. We will teach you HTML and jQuery. You will learn Node.js, Angular, MongoDB. You will also learn DevOps and SQL. So these things will help you to understand how the front end and the back end world work. How do front and back end applications communicate with each other, and you can build an entire website, an entire web platform by yourself. So you'll learn a lot of things. Some of these are the main technologies. You'll also learn DevOps. DevOps is basically something that teaches you how to manage and how to deploy your applications. HTML and CSS are already going to be taught. You can also learn Angular and Node.js. You'll learn the create, read, update, and delete commands, and you'll learn authentication and authorization using JSON Web Tokens. This is the current standard. So JSON Web Token is nowadays being used to authenticate and authorize, and it's one of the most secure ways to do it as of now. So as you can see, all the live courses are available, and you can take a look at their content and all of that, and they'll show you the live courses here as well. You can take a look at everything that is being taught. We provide hands-on exercises, we provide in-depth understanding of the topics, and we also provide you with projects that you can do and put on your portfolio, so that you can take a look at this and show your recruiters that you have built something, which is one of the most important things. Here's the learning path. So in the 6th week, you'll start learning DevOps. Then you'll learn SQL, JavaScript, HTML, CSS. You'll learn Angular, MongoDB, and finally you'll learn Node.js. And then you'll be a mean stack developer, and you can apply for courses. So these are the technologies that will be taught to you, and this will be the certificate that will be provided you. Imagine your name here. And this certificate is recognized by a lot of multinational companies, including IBM, Amazon, Ericsson, and so on, as you can see. And the list is quite big. These are just a few names in the list. And as you can see, the ratings are quite good. We have 4.98. It's one of the most highly rated courses on our website. Now, if you have a few questions, then maybe the FAQ section can help you out. We have a lot of content here. As you can see, we have a lot of questions that are being answered. If you have one of these questions, then you can take a look at the FAQs and understand the problems that some of the people had when trying to reach that course, and you can have your questions answered. But let's suppose that your question is not being answered there. So what can you do? Well, before answering the questions, I have a gift for you. So we have YouTube 30. That's a coupon code that you can use when you're buying a course from our website, and you'll get a flat 30% discount. This coupon code is valid for tonight, and it's only for the YouTube viewers. So YouTube 30 is the course. If you are getting in touch with our course advisors, you can tell them that you wish to use this coupon code, and you'll get a flat 30% off on any course that you wish to buy. So if you have any other questions that have not been answered in the FAQs, if you want to know something more, if you want to explore more courses, our course advisors are 24/7 available to chat with you. You can contact them at any point of time, whenever you wish to. Here are the numbers on your screen. The numbers are for India and US, and the US number is toll free, as well as you can contact us via email at sales@intellipaat.com. You can ask our sales advisors, our course advisors, for guidance on which course you should take, and they'll help you out with anything that they can help you out with. And with that, we've come to the end of our presentation. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and thank you so much for sticking with me till the end. Hopefully you've gained a lot of knowledge, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.